Jambo Jambo YouStormer, it is the 14th of August 2024 and we're checking out Tropical Storm Ernesto, which is, as it has been looking in the last two videos, Bermuda has been a target of the storm, and it looks like that is still the case today. The storm is on the verge of hurricane intensity. The center is the northern blob here to the north. It's taken a big beating over Puerto Rico with big convection to the south as well. But we're going to have to take a careful look at this storm because it looks quite dangerous. Currently, the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center has the storm at 60 knots. That's just 4 knots off hurricane intensity. As the tropical storm Ernesto passed, the center of it passed directly over northern Guadeloupe and over Montserrat, but it's affected all of these islands. Now the tropical storm warning has been limited to the Virgin Islands, British and US Virgin Islands, and also Puerto Rico. And this satellite image came in, this is from the morning of the 13th of August, and this is when the tropical storm was just pushing out big convection, as it was just to the southwest of Montserrat. If I remove the actual satellite imagery, we can see where it was, and you can see this is after it passed over Guadeloupe and then impacted Montserrat with extremely heavy rainfall, I'd imagine. Here's a broader view that gives a bit of a better impression of the general circulation in this region. So what happens now? Well, there's been a significant change in the National Hurricane Center prediction for intensity, not so much the track. They did previously have it as a hurricane moving up towards Bermuda, but now it has been switched to a major hurricane, with these M's being the major hurricane status, with a major hurricane approaching Bermuda late on Friday, but it's into the weekend. So this has actually sped up the track a bit from yesterday's video. That's interesting. So we'll have to check very carefully as to the timing as to when this is going to be closest to Bermuda and how uncertain the tracks are as it approaches the island. A major hurricane is any hurricane at Category 3 intensity or higher. And so if we look at this chart, we'll see that that means the wind speeds have to be over 96 knots or 111 miles per hour. And by the wind speeds, we mean the 1 minute sustained maximum winds. So we're going to jump in with the high resolution hurricane WRF forecast, as we always do, which may be a mistake because it's a bit dodgy to look at just one particular model, particularly this high resolution model. It gives the impression that something's going to happen, but it's actually just an example of one possible reality, I guess. This is a critical time for the storm because it's right next to Puerto Rico and there's a lot of interaction with the land going there. So where it's positioned and where it then swings towards the north, where it kind of settles into that swing, will probably determine how close it gets to Bermuda. And that's where the hurricane WRF gets kind of interesting. So pretty quickly it becomes a hurricane, and you know it's a hurricane because we see the purples in the wind field, which indicates sustained winds 1 minute at above 64 knots. So let's push this forward. So the domain follows the storm as it moves north of the Caribbean islands. That's the islands of the Bahamas are just getting picked in on the left, not getting affected apart from high waves that'll be swinging off this storm. And then as the storm moves northward, we'll begin to see Bermuda come in. And the hurricane WRF actually takes the storm as a major hurricane towards the end of the simulation. We can see a major hurricane passing just to the west of Bermuda, and that is Bermuda in there, that little island. So the hurricane WRF looks better than yesterday for Bermuda, but it is just one model, and in the last National Hurricane Center update they had the consensus model having the track much closer to Bermuda. So we'll check out some other models and have a look. Compare that with the National Hurricane Center forecast. If we just put a line between these 2 points, it takes it closer to Bermuda. Next up, let's check out the European center model, the current circulation center of the storm being just north of Puerto Rico here, and let's bump it forward. As we move forward, it takes that turn towards the north, and Bermuda is up here where it says Hamilton, so we'll see how close it gets. Comes up, and notice the wind field is stronger on the eastern side of the storm as it moves in the same direction as the storm movement. And so it comes up, and again it is a little bit to the west, and certainly a bit to the west as to yesterday, and it actually brings Bermuda into probably tropical storm conditions but not hurricane conditions. So that's also hopeful. As with the hurricane wharf, the positioning in this model track and the hurricane wharf is taking the storm to the west of Bermuda, and that is good news. But that westward track brings up another problem, I'm afraid, because the storm actually is significantly west from the previous round of forecasts, and I do suspect that's because of that interaction with Puerto Rico, and that initial position has been bumped a little bit. But a pretty significant hurricane. I mean, it's difficult to tell with the European center model, but probably a major hurricane is approaching very far north, a little bit too close for comfort, and actually it does move up towards Nova Scotia as a tropical, a weakening. Probably, I would guess that's a minimal hurricane or tropical storm. Yeah, God, it's close. So that small change in track could be significant for potential Canadian impacts. Wow, this is going to be quite an interesting situation. Just comparing, and this is far out in the forecast by, 5 days? But the GFS forecast, to compare with the European Centre, takes the storm into Newfoundland and over St. John's, probably as a kind of a transitioning system. But both models are indicating significant impacts over the Canadian Atlantic region. If we take a look at the maximal potential intensity, which gives an impression as to the maximum possible intensity of a storm, you can see if it does take that track up to the Canadian Atlantic that there's a sudden drop off in the MPI, and that's because of that cooler waters on the north side of the Gulf Stream. Probably it's even now still probably a little early in the season to get a Canadian hurricane, but anyway, if it moves very quickly north, you'd still have a very strong and potentially damaging storm. As for Bermuda, it is in the major hurricane category 4, and there's even some category 5 areas. I'm not exactly sure where Bermuda is on this map, but there is potential for a major hurricane for sure, depending on that track. And we really are in this critical stage now, I think, with the storm being right next to Puerto Rico. Where will it end up? Where will the center end up once it kind of edges and gets clear of Puerto Rico and the other islands? Once we know that center, I think we'll have a really good idea as to whether this is going to be a major or minor impact on Bermuda, and then onwards into Atlantic Canada. And on that note, I think I'll wrap it up. See you in the next one. We'll probably do some more updates. Why not?